Hey you guys, what's going on? It's the movie retrospective, and we're talking about, I guess it's like a classic Western, but it's also kind of like a different modern kind of Western,
It
which
was at
is
the time. Yeah,
Unforgiven
yeah,
from 1992. Best Picture winner that
yeah.
year, matter of fact. One of only three, I think it was only three Westerns that ever won Best Picture. I remember seeing, I don't think I saw this in the theater, like when it came out, but I'm not usually like a big Westerns person. Like I've seen a lot that I liked, but I remember seeing this one, I think I rented it like maybe a year or two after it came out, and I remember really, really liking it, but I don't think that I had seen it since then, so I was like really excited to rewatch it. And yeah, this is a great fucking movie. This is a great fucking movie.
I remember when it was out, everybody was talking about it. Everybody was, oh, you gotta go
Yeah,
see that
yeah,
one.
yeah.
It was a big deal. It was a good movie, and what's great about it is that you can tell it's like kind of like an indie flick in terms of budget. It's not super high budget.
14 million, I think
Yeah,
it cost.
that's nothing by today's
And it
standard.
made like way more
Yeah.
than that back, obviously.
But because the writing was so good in it, is
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
It was a no bullshit western. They tried to kind of expose the myths of the fucking.
That was like the best
That
thing
was
about it, I think. That's like
Yeah.
one of the main themes, I feel like, is that it's kind of skewering the mythology behind the American West. You know what I mean? Which I think it's kind of going back. They call it a revisionist Western, which is usually, that's a whole subgenre unto itself. And that if it's a revisionist Western, that usually means it's like more morally gray or more morally ambiguous, because in contrast to maybe like the pre-spaghetti Western era where Westerns were very like black and white, like the morality.
Yeah.
So it's kind of trying to show, you know, the American West more like it actually was, rather than like heroes, villains, black hat, white hat. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no, it was a mixture of everything.
Right.
It was kind of like something you'd see in the modern world. Basically, just criminals. A lot of them were just criminals. And then you had guys who were good or trying to stop the criminality and uphold law, but they were bad too, kind of.
Yeah.
They had a lot of human frailty in them and corruption. It was just human behavior, you know. But this is a good movie, and it goes. And Clint Eastwood's kind of going out of his way to go, hey, look, gunfighters were fucking criminals. Okay, they
Yeah.
shot people in the mouth for no good reason because they were drunk. They did things, you know. Then they didn't remember what they did. They would just run away sometimes, you know, in a hail of bullets, and then just didn't realize how lucky they were to get away, you know. Because during the time of the what we would call the Old West, they had pulp writers going in there writing basically superhero novels on what was going on in the and selling them out
Which,
east.
yeah, and there's a
They got
reference that,
character
they
here,
got a
dude.
character in here like that.
Right, and they kind of exposed the bullshit of those pulp novels back in the 1800s and what they were saying about, you know, what they were writing. That's not the way it was. That was they were making comic books really based on what was happening, but that's not what those guys were like. You know, they were some of them were bums basically.
Yeah,
Bums walking
and like I
around.
said, I think that's the best thing about
Yeah.
this movie is that it really does kind of like expose
Yeah.
this whole like gunfighter as hero, or like the whole romanticizing of that. And he's kind of trying to show the way it really was. It's like there was nothing noble about them. It's like most of the time they were just
Mad.
yeah,
They
they
were
were
just
just
mad.
mad or drunk, or they just
Yeah.
like killed people. They weren't really thinking about it.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like Clint Eastwood's character in particular, whose name is William Money. He was kind of like one of those guys that, you know, would have been mythologized in like an older Western. Like he just went around in town and like shot people, and, you know, he was like a crack shot and all this other kind of shit. Like he was an outlaw. But he's kind of gotten to a place in his life now where he just regretted like everything that he ever did. And he was just like, I was a piece of shit human being, and I killed women and children without even thinking about it. I was just drunk all the time. And, you know, so there's nothing like romantic about that at all.
Yeah,
and now he's kind of trying to make amends by raising his kids, you know?
Even the members of the gang that he was in, the group, were scared of him or didn't like him.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there wasn't even any camaraderie among these outlaws. You know, they couldn't stand each other. So they point that out, you know, and just it's a good flick because this character Monty, William Monty, I think is what,
Yeah.
he's already a legend. All right.
Yeah.
People know about him, but he's been hiding. And what they believe about him is partially true, but not really. He wasn't, they were, like, there's a scene where the pulp writer's going like, okay, you just killed 5 guys in here. This is it. And he's referring to his own books and what other gunfighters told him. He says you're supposed to shoot the fastest or the biggest threat first. So which one did you shoot first? And he goes, I don't know. He goes, you don't know? And he goes, no, I was just lucky in the order.
Yeah.
Yeah. He goes, but I've always been lucky at killing people.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any. First thing he does, well, they capture his friend and torture him, and he dies during the torture, and they put him in a box out in front of Greeley's store. It was a store or it was a saloon? It was a saloon, I think.
It was a saloon. Yeah, I think it was called Skinny's.
Yeah.
No, I guess it was called Greeley's, right. The guy's name was Skinny.
Yeah. And they're in there forming a posse to run after William Money, and he walks in. They thought he was on the run. No, he went to him. Just walked right in. They turned around. He's standing right there with a shotgun, or it might have been a lever-action rifle. But I think he started off with a shotgun, double-barreled shotgun. And he goes, "All right, who owns this shithole?" And he goes, "I am the owner of this establishment." He just blows him away. Boom. And the sheriff goes, "You just killed an unarmed man." And he goes, "Well, he should have armed himself if he was going to decorate this shithole with my friend out front." Which that's a lot closer to the way the Old West was. They shot people in the back. They did all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were murderers.
Yeah.
Like
I said, there was no nobility in it, really. They weren't, like, heroic or anything.
No. And there wasn't too many of those, I'll meet you out back high noon and we're going to duke it out in the street, fair and square like a duel. Nah, it's bushwhacking, assassinations, murder. Getting drunk in the middle of a card game and opening fire in a fucking crowded place. They did that. But there were some misconceptions about the Old West. In general, guns weren't allowed in town. You had to check them in at the sheriff's office.
Which they show in here, too.
They show that.
Big Whiskey is the name of the town.
It was mostly peaceful in the Old West per capita. The crime wasn't out of control, really, when you think about it. Nothing compared to what you'd find today. It's just that when something went down, everybody heard about it. There were outlaws. There were criminals. They made a bigger impression back then because the population was a lot lower.
That's what I'm saying. I think it was more a case of that. Like, there just weren't as many people, so it was easier to, like, make a mythology about somebody that maybe didn't do. And I think one of the best scenes in this, too, that's kind of, like, emblematic of, myth making is, the kind of inciting incident of the whole plot, which is, the prostitute, the girl getting her face cut up. Yeah. And, it's bad. Her face is all cut up and it's scarred and everything like that. But you can see, like, as it goes on, like, before they actually see her in person, the story of what her injuries are is, like, way embellished.
Yeah, way embellished.
Like, way, way worse than it actually was.
It's like a game of telephone. By the time the assassins or the guns for hire heard about it, they thought her tongue had been cut out, her eyes had been cut out.
They cut off her fingers.
Yeah, and pulled her fingers and toes off and cut her breasts off and shit, But that's not what happened. She just got slashed up a little bit on the face.
Yeah. Which, like I said, that's bad, but it wasn't anything like...
For laughing at a dude's dick.
Yeah. It is micro penis.
Yeah, he was drunk and he fucking lashed out at her.
Yeah.
They tried to buy her off. And what was sad is that the dude's friend, who had nothing to do with it, got caught up in the middle of it. He tried to fix it, but he got killed.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. So, innocent dudes were going down with the guilty, that's the way shit went then, too.
Yeah, and the thing about this one, like I said, every single character is morally ambiguous, just like in real life. Like, some of the characters do really bad shit, but then some of the characters, like, the same characters, like, aren't all bad. Like, they all have both, attributes.
Well, even the head hooker, she's trying to get justice for her friend who got caught up, but even she's maximizing it. She's blowing it way out of proportion. And hiring assassins and turning down monies for what was it, restitution. They were trying to give her, and that was an innocent guy who tried to give her a horse.
Because he felt bad about what his friend did.
So it was just and the actual victim of the crime is like kind of like an innocent bystander. She doesn't even really want to get involved. She guess she's not a pimp, but it's her boss. the head hooker.
Yeah, the madam.
She's the one that's really
well, and all
pushing.
the other. I mean, and the thing about it is that like you can understand, like I said, because this is the inciting incident. You can understand their outrage. This poor girl's face was all cut up. And now they're saying, well, she's a prostitute, so now she's not going to be able to do her job anymore, or at least not be able to command the same salary, whatever the fuck, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because nobody will ask for her because her face is all messed up now.
Yeah.
And I think so that was like, really bad. But then the problem was like compounded by the sheriff, who's played by Gene Hackman, Little Bill, his name is, and he was gonna whip them. Which probably would have been okay.
Yeah, just whip him. But the other guy was innocent. What would they whip that guy for?
Well, yeah, but they, they were together, so he just figured like guilt by association.
Yeah, mass punishment.
But then, the madam was like, well, that's all you're gonna do? Like he took away like her ability to like do her job essentially because he cut her face all up. Yeah. And so then after that, but then Gene Hackman is like, oh well, now we're not even gonna whip him. Now we're just gonna like pay. Now you just have to pay the guy that like bought the prostitute's contract.
Yeah, so he gets the money.
So he gets the money, not her. So she doesn't get anything. So like the prostitutes were like, "Fuck this shit," and they all pooled all their money. Yeah. And they said, and they put out a call. They're like, "We want assassins to come and kill these two dudes," which, like I said, is what he did was bad, but it probably didn't warrant that. Like if they'd been whipped and stuff like that, that probably would have been. Okay, and then maybe some monetary compensation would have been in order also.
The innocent guy tried to do that.
Right.
He was the one that got caught up in it. He gave her a choice
like
prize
a pony,
which it wasn't really a pony. It was a young horse, but maybe they would call it a pony back then, a smaller horse. But some people like a pony. That's it. That was worth a lot of money back then.
Yeah, she could have sold it.
That would have been like a high-end car back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
She could have sold it and got the fucking what's his name, her pimp, fucking is the one that got all the damn money. I think he got 7 or 5.
Yeah, I think it ended up being like 6 or 7 horses, something like that. Because they said, and he didn't have to like pay the horses right then. They said, next spring, like after the thaw, because I think it was wintertime, and it's like, next spring, you bring me 5 ponies, and you bring me 2 ponies, or whatever, and give them to Skinny, who is like the boss. So like the girl that got cut up didn't get jack.
Yeah, it was and it had to do with the fact that it was kind of like damages against this contract that he had. So
because she was property, he bought her contract.
Right, and so that's like indentured servitude was fucking real common.
It was.
People forget all about it, but no, fucking white people were slaves. They just did it a different way. You had to buy and sell contracts, especially women. And Irish were some of them were under contracts with the railroad and the Chinese, and they just mowed them down like nothing. Killed them.
They didn't give a shit.
Give a shit. Irishmen was worth nothing. I mean, they were less than nothing. They were like a liability, But that didn't last long. They stopped all that shit. And it wasn't the government. It was these corporations, man. The corporations had more power than the government. The government had no power in Washington, D.C. They couldn't reach out and do anything. Everything was local.
Well, and I kind of feel like especially, too, like out west, too. Because it was just so...
It was outside the U.S. territory.
I mean, that's
sometimes.
far.
Right. So... Yeah, the prostitute, fucking I forgot what her name was, one that got caught up. Now, here's the thing. They were saying that she's no good, that she's useless. She wasn't that damaged by looking at it, unless they didn't have the special effects money to make her look worse.
Well, I think that was kind of the whole point, that it's like, they didn't know how it was going to look like when it healed.
Yeah, that would have healed up.
And when it healed, like, it looked kind of fucked up, but not, I mean, she was still pretty.
Yeah,
you could still tell that she was a pretty, woman.
Yeah, it would have faded.
So, yeah, they probably would have faded away. But I think that was kind of the point, and kind of the point, too, of, when Clint Eastwood, finds out about the contract against the killers and it's $1,000, and he's like, oh, my farm is failing, so maybe I should get in on some of that money. And they were talking about her injuries like they were way, way worse. But I think that's why, because they're not saying that her having her face cut up wasn't bad. It was. But then, like, that being the inciting incident, which in the grand scheme of, like, what ended up happening, like, what ended up, happening in the wake of that was, like, so much, like, many, many times worse than that. You know what I mean? And it's like, and it wasn't even, and it wasn't even like the fact that she had her fingers cut off or her tits cut off or anything like that. Like they were saying, yeah, her face was cut up and that sucked, but you know, the repercussions of it were like a million times worse than like the initial incident. And I think that was the point of her not really looking that bad in the end.
Yeah, that would have healed up. She'd have been fine. It's not like he ripped her open with a saw or mutilated her or anything. It was a couple of slices across the face with evidently a sharp knife, which is better than a dull knife, okay? Because it's a cleaner cut and it heals up a lot better. It just looked like lines.
Was it a knife or was it, well, maybe it was a straight razor?
Might have been
I thought it was a straight razor.
Might have been, which that would be even better because that's just almost surgical. It'll heal right up if you put the bandages on right, tape her up right, or put a stitch or two. I don't even think she had stitches, so it couldn't have been very deep. But she'd have been all right. But it brought down, and the sheriff is like, he's like, you whores do not know what you've done. He goes, that $1,000 offer you put out is gonna bring in monsters in here like you've never fucking.
And it did.
And it did. Okay.
And it did.
Because they thought it was gonna be easy, but no, that fucking basically destroyed the town. It brought a bunch.
Everybody heard about it.
Right.
And like $1,000 was a lot of money back then.
And the dudes that got involved in the little slicing of the prostitute's face really were just a bunch of cowboys. They weren't criminals or anything. They were working out at a ranch, and they were just working stiffs, regular guys. The one dude, really, he should have been punished for it. The other guys just got caught up in it. They were protecting him from all these assassins that were coming. A lot of them get waxed. Out in, what was it called, the Circle T? Or the Bet T?
The Bar T.
Bar T. Yeah, we're at the Bar T is where they worked. And that was one of the reasons why they didn't want to whip him. The sheriff was kind of trying to be practical about it. You know, he's like, this is the source of the town's income. I can't really go down hard on these cowboys or I'll chase the business away. That's where your tax revenue is coming from. So he really just should have given that dude time. That's what I would have done.
Yeah, I mean, at least punish him, obviously, because what he did was bad, but it just seemed like everybody's decisions. Yeah. The thing that's great about this movie, like I said, and why the writing is so good, it was actually written by the guy that co-wrote Blade Runner, by the way.
All right, yeah.
David Webb Peoples. And so I think the great thing is that everybody's decisions that they made at the time, even if you wouldn't have done the same thing, like you can understand why that person made that decision. Yeah. That doesn't necessarily mean that they were a good person, but you know, like
it was goal directed. It was just
right. Like everybody had understandable reasons for doing what they did, even though like sometimes the repercussions of that like were way fucked up, like along the line. You know,
really one of the best characters in the movie is the sheriff. All right.
Yeah.
He's caught in between a rock and a hard place. He's trying to bring civilization and order to a bunch of fucking savages, basically. And there's a lot of symbolism in his character. Like he's trying to build a house in his off time.
Yeah.
Which is kind of symbolic of him trying to build a nation or to build civilization. It's not working. It's leaking. He's a terrible carpenter. Which that's kind of what's going on in this town. He's dealing with all these different people and trying to keep peace between them in some kind of civilized manner. Civilization doesn't work in a frontier town. Not really. And this movie is a good demonstration of why it doesn't work. Not real well. And you think he's kind of a heroic character, but you find out he's got a bunch of failings too. His head gets big. He gets real fucking arrogant once he steals fucking English Bob's biographer. Then he thinks he's the star and starts fucking cracking down on people.
Yeah, like because honestly, like the first assassin that shows up is not Clint Eastwood and his little gang. It's actually a dude named English Bob. Yeah. And English Bob shows up with this biographer, like this writer. And he's written this book about English Bob where he just like totally polished his knob and like made him seem like the most awesome heroic gunfighter of all time.
Called him the Duke of Death, is the name of the books. And the fucking sheriff's like, no, the Duck of Death.
He keeps saying
he will not say Duke, he says Duck every time. And he hates him. He knows him from before.
Yeah.
And knows the truth about him, English Bob. Which is the same dude who played a fucking what's his name in The Man Called Horse.
Richard Harris.
Richard Harris, yeah, he does a great job.
He was in a fuck ton of movies. Yeah. He's very, very famous.
And
British
he's
actor.
Just this arrogant British guy who shows up insulting Americans and the presidents on fucking Independence Day, and just he called them a bunch of uncivilized savages. England wouldn't have you, that kind of shit. It's fucking funny, but you can see things a little bit from his point of view sometimes. He's just a good character.
He is a really good character.
He gets his ass whipped bad.
Well, that's the thing, and the irony of his character, because like I said, him and Little Bill, who's Gene Hackman's character, the sheriff, they have like a long history, and like I said, they kind of hate each other. Yeah. But the thing about it is that when English Bob shows up in the town, like, looking to collect on the bounty that the prostitutes have put forward, and he's there with the biographer, and the biographer who is all romanticizing all these gunslingers and everything, and so like Little Bill is reading this book and being like, this is a bunch of bullshit, and he's like, I was there at this, and this isn't what happened. Yeah. Like, he's not a heroic gunslinger. Like, he shot people in the back. He just like shot people out of luck.
Shot people in the liver when he was drunk over a woman.
Right, shit like warning. That. Like, there was no nobility in it whatsoever. But then the irony of it is that after English Bob gets his ass kicked and run out of town on a rail, and the biographer decides to stay because now he thinks that Little Bill is actually like way cooler. Yeah. And so then like Little Bill starts to get like a real inflated ego too, and he starts like walking around like cock of the walk, like thinking that he's like the shit now. Yeah,
and then later on at the end, when William comes in and wipes everyone out, just like in just a hot-blooded fury, the biographer survives it and gets up and starts quizzing him and becomes fucking fascinated with this outlaw. And the outlaw doesn't live up to any of his expectations based upon what these other gunfighters and cops have told him, about what combat's like. And he tries to hang out with him, but he was lucky to get away with his life. I don't think William didn't kill him. I think he let him go.
I think he did, yeah.
And in the end, that biographer tried to help the posse kill William Money. Remember that? Yeah. He was there while they were telling them to shoot. So they were all kind of shitbags.
Yeah, everybody in this is kind of a shitbag. And even if they're not a shitbag in the events, like during the events of the movie, like Morgan Freeman's character Ned,
Ned was a good guy. Yeah.
He's a good guy now, but he was a shithead like back in the old days, just like William Money was. Like you're meant to imply. Like you only see William Money and Ned in the nowadays when they've regretted like what they've done and they've retired and now they're farmers and they're kind of saying, well, we're lucky because we didn't get killed, we didn't get arrested or hanged or anything like that. We were kind of allowed to live out our golden years just like on a farm and in peace, which
they kind of didn't deserve. They deserved
to die. Didn't deserve.
They deserved to die, actually.
And that's another thing. That's another thing that the movie kind of like highlights, that your fate, like a lot of people don't get what they deserve. Like the two of them were like the worst of the worst. Yeah. But they retired and they were living. And actually, William Money had a wife. She had passed away like 3 years previously. And he had kids. 2 little kids. Yeah. And Ned had a wife as well, like a common law wife.
Yeah, Sally, right?
Sally Two Trees.
Yeah, she was an Indian woman. Yeah. Yeah. He calls her an Injun. Well, she's an Injun. Well, she don't take too. They're not real kindly.
They're not real friendly.
Not real friendly. Like because she always hated me. She knew I was bad. Yeah. And he's like, well, yeah.
But that's what's so sad is that the whole situation, like with William Money's character in particular, and I had forgotten because Clint Eastwood, he directed and everything, and he was like so much part of the marketing. You forget that like Clint Eastwood doesn't actually show up in the movie until like a little bit later on, because kind of you still have all of the stuff with Gene Hackman and the prostitutes and everything, and then only later on, like once the prostitutes put out the message about the money, and then there's the whole thing with English Bob and everything. Yeah. But then Clint Eastwood, he's like, oh, I heard about this $1,000 and I could really use it because my farm is failing. And then he goes, actually, he only hears about it because that kid, the Schofield kid, comes and tells him about it. Because the Schofield kid is another kind of romanticizing, like he's heard of William Money because he's like a legend. He was like the worst fucking criminal, like worst outlaw, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he's worse than John Wesley Arden.
Yeah.
Who's worse than that. John Wesley wasn't that bad. He just had a fucking bad reputation. There was a lot worse ones. They have this trio of these outlaws. 2 of them are retired. And who summons them back into the game is this young kid called the Schofield kid. And there's, why do they call you the Schofield kid? You from Schofield? He goes, no, because I carry this Schofield revolver. And I'm thinking, me and Jenny are laughing. Yeah, like everybody else.
I said you might as well call him Gun Boy.
Gun Boy, yeah. Your name is Gun Boy. Yeah, everybody's got those. And he's making all these fucking proud boasts. He killed 5 men or 6 men, and including Mexicans, and which that's another thing is that in a good Western movie, you got to include the influence of the Mexicans. There were a lot of Mexicans inside the American territory, and they were players in it. Okay. I don't even think they showed any Mexicans in this, did they?
I do not think there were any Mexicans.
Yeah, all that Southwest stuff here was Mexican cowboys were in there, Mexican gunfighters. There's more of that in like Good, Bad, the Ugly, and Fistful of Dollars. There's the Sergio Leone included a lot of Mexicans. All right, which they were they were good characters, but it depended on the region. Anyway, he's real boastful. And he's kind of he kind of talks big and looks down her noses at these older guys sometimes. He looks up to them, but then looks down at them, depending on
the arrogance of youth.
Yeah. He's insecure too.
Yeah, big time.
Because he's lying. He hadn't killed anybody.
No.
And he's also got really bad eyesight. He can't see far. He can't see
like past 50 yards or something like that.
He can't really see.
Yeah.
And it turns out one of the things he wants to do with this money is get some spectacles.
Yeah.
So he wants some spectacles and fine clothes. Which that kind of comes into play later. Anyway, when it turns out at the end, after he scores his first kill, the Schofield kid, he realizes that wasn't as cool as he thought it was. He started fucking busting up about it, crying a bit, because he shot the dude while he was on the fucking commode. Well, it wasn't even a commode, it was an outhouse.
Yeah, he shot him in this while he was taking a shit.
Right. And so it wasn't as glorious as he thought it was, But here's the thing, that's realistic.
Yeah.
Me being ex-infantry, no, man, you're raiding enemy, you're trained to raid enemy camps while they're asleep, sometimes using stealth. You know what I mean? And machine gunning people while they're still in their sleeping bags as quickly as possible. It's not, it's about as brave as dropping a bomb on somebody. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's not. It's just business. It's not. It's not.
Right.
It's not some glorified, wow, heroic thing like out of a damn old-fashioned war movie or something. No, it's murder. No. Real combat's murder.
And that's kind of like, like I said, that's kind of like a big, central theme of this movie is that, because William Money tells him, it's like, oh, hey, they saw him go in the outhouse because they were watching the house.
Yeah. Like, that's
and
a
he's
good
like, there's a good, go get him.
Go get him, yeah.
So Schofield kid goes and gets him. And, he hesitates, too. Like, even though the guy obviously can't get away because he's in there, sitting on the can. And, and he's in this little outhouse. So he finally shoots him like that. But then, afterward, he's just crying. And he's just like, yeah, I never shot anybody. And, probably Clint Eastwood's like, yeah, I could tell.
Yeah.
Pretty much from the beginning. But he's like, I never want to kill another person ever again.
It don't feel good. That first one's fucking hard, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he said, not only didn't it feel good, but it wasn't anything like he imagined that it was going to be. He thought it was going to be this big, glorious, badass kind of thing, and it wasn't. He just, shot the dude down while he was taking
low,
the shit.
Down low and dirty.
Right.
And that's the normal military situation, too. A lot of people are like, what? What are you talking about? The proud U.S. Army? It's not the way it really is, okay? Military doctrine dictates that you want 3-to-1 numerical supremacy over the enemy before you attack. So first of all, you must outnumber the enemy before you really want to attack. And you always want to time the attack so you are at your most alert and strongest and they are at their least alert and weakest. So pre-dawn, that's usually where you want to do it. Or in really bad weather. Because you want the advantage, every advantage. Because when you think about it, you as a commander, your responsibility is to bring as many of your guys home as possible. A fair fight is not what you're looking for if you want to bring your guys home. You basically want as close to murder as possible. That's what an ambush is. That's what a raid is, So even the military's like this. So that's why William Money's like, yeah, welcome to the club. This is what it's really like.
Yeah, he's like, sucks, don't it? He's like, now you see why I'm so fucked up.
Yeah, because William Money's got PTSD, seeing visions of his dead wife, head's busted open with maggots in her, and dead people are visiting him, and is losing his mind with fever sometimes, It's, because it's down low.
Yeah. He's like having a hard time too because
Yeah.
he kind of felt like his wife and his kids like redeemed him to a degree, but then like after his wife died, he seems like he's kind of lost the plot a little bit. And like I said, the farm is kind of going downhill, and he's not really sure how he's going to be able to support his kids going forward. So, which is what gets him kind of sucked into this whole thing to start with.
See, William Monty had killed so many people that killing a new person kind of alleviates the pain of the last one, which is a phenomenon that you'll hear people talk about sometimes who are involved in. A lot of times it's like in tribal type warfare. The first person you kill, it's traumatic, so you feel kind of numb from it. And a lot of those armies will try to make sure that guy kills another person as quickly as possible, and it kind of replaces the psychological effects of the first one. It's kind of like if you ever hit your hand, you'll feel pain and it'll get kind of numb. If you hit it again, it feels good. They start to get addicted to being in that, which is probably something like what a serial killer does.
Yeah, similar.
But it's just more about high intensity gunfighting and shooting people in fights and stuff. But General Butt Naked talked a little bit like that. Says that once he was an African warlord.
Yeah, we did a show about him a while back.
Says once your soldiers start killing people, you want to keep the ball rolling and keep them killing as much as possible, or they'll start to question what they're doing and start to have psychological problems. Strange, huh? But that's just the way
it's not really that strange. I mean, it kind of makes sense when you think about it.
Because each successive killing reinforces the ones before it, as if you're justifying what you're doing.
Right.
You're saying this is part of it.
The farther you get into it, like the more it's kind of like seems
become
like
more
this
normal,
is,
more part of you.
Sure.
So that's where William Monty is in this, but he's been in it too long. He's now old and breaking down. He can't lie to himself anymore because he's telling Ned, that one dude I shot, remember that coachman I shot in the mouth? And his teeth went flying out the back. He goes, yeah, I remember that. And he goes, he didn't do anything to deserve to be shot. And he goes, yeah, he was a crazy son of a bitch back then. Ned's trying to chill him out and keep him cool.
Because he can tell that he's like losing it.
Yeah, and he feels bad.
I mean, Ned feels bad too, but...
Yeah.
I mean, and Ned was not quite as bad as William Money was, but you're led to believe that he's almost as bad because they hung out in the same circle.
They hung out, and they're admitting that it didn't really have anything to do with organized crime or anything like that or any higher goal. A lot of it just had to do with being real drunk and getting pissed off and getting in fights.
Yep.
And it really wasn't anything. And just shooting an innocent bystander.
Yeah, just random ass people.
For looking at you funny or something,
Yeah. Yeah, it's implied that that's what a lot of his kills were. So there wasn't, like I said, there was no glory in them or anything like that. There wasn't even a reason behind most of them.
No, just pure meanness.
Yeah, he was just like a mean
being in a
son
fury.
Of a bitch. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about this too, if you think about it, when I was like reading some stuff behind the scenes about this movie, is that it's actually loosely kind of based on the Iliad.
Oh, okay.
Like the plot of it is kind of like very, very similar. Also, I didn't realize, but the concept of this movie goes all the way back to the mid-1970s. They were actually thinking about doing, I think back then it was called the Cut Horror Killings. And they were giving it to Clint Eastwood even back then, or even like in the 80s. And he didn't really want to, he wanted to do some other stuff first, like before he got around to it. And once he got around to making it, because it came out in 1992, he kind of felt like, well, this was his definitive statement on the Western, so he didn't really want to make any Westerns anymore after that, because this was kind of like his, this is it. This is like the big, like, Well,
I would say story and writing-wise, this is the perfect Western.
It really does seem to be.
It only has one weakness. Fight and shooting choreography isn't all that impressive by today's standards. But it doesn't matter, because the story is good enough. The characters are good enough to keep this movie relevant. This movie is still a great movie today. Had you made this movie today, you'd have had more intense gunfights and better camera angles and stuff. But that's just not the spirit of this movie. This movie is mostly a series of lessons.
Yeah, and I think that would have been a mistake, like to make the gunfights and the violence seem more badass or more over the top or more intense, because the whole point of the movie is that nothing's ever like what it's romanticized as.
Yeah, but that final fucking confrontation where William goes into the saloon and fucking attacks the posse. That was pretty fucking intense.
Yeah.
Just goes in there just cold-blooded with a shotgun and just shoots an unarmed man and then just works over a whole crowd of people. And survives it by luck.
Yeah.
Luck and good shooting, you know.
And he's, like, aware of that,
and aware
too.
of it, yeah. Yeah, that was the thing about William, is that William knew. Like, when the biographer now starts talking to him, the biographer was impressed that everything that he had been told by these other lawmen and gunfighters wasn't true. That this guy's doing this all on luck.
Yeah.
Luck and hate. Basically.
Pretty much, yeah. And the only reason he survived, like I said, was just like... He had a
kamikaze mentality. He don't think he really cared.
And the thing about it was that, like you said, he didn't really deserve, like, his fate. He didn't deserve to still be alive.
Yeah, he said that. He walks up to Little Bill and points a gun at him, and he goes, and Little Bill goes, I don't deserve this. I was building a house. And fucking William says, deserving's got nothing to do with it. Yeah. And just shoots him.
Yeah.
Because your fate is random.
Right.
Good or bad.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like so much stuff is out of your control.
Yeah.
And I think that this was the movie was like really good at showing that without like pounding you over the head with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like I said, you know, Clint Eastwood, he killed however many people he killed. I don't think they ever said how many people he killed altogether.
In that final one? Oh, I mean, in his whole career?
In his whole career, yeah.
Oh, man, they're
like a lot,
they're leading you to believe at least 50.
Yeah, that it was like, you know, that they lost track, you know what I mean?
Some of them were just innocent people.
Right.
That gave him a funny look, you know, when he was in a bad mood and just shot him.
Yeah.
Probably
but then,
people that witnessed a shootout or something and he just, boom, don't look at me like that.
Well, like I said, you know, did Little Bill deserve to get shot in the face while he was laying down? No, probably not. You know, he wasn't a good guy, but he didn't really deserve that. But, you know, did William Money deserve to still be alive and have, like, nice 2 kids and a farm and all that other kind of stuff and have a peaceful life? No, he didn't deserve that either because he was a terrible human being.
Now, what William Money was doing, just shooting bystanders and shit, there's a call in the military for that also. When if you're in an infantry unit, back in the day, back when infantry really went to real wars, all right, not really these police actions like they do today, but World War II style shit, when you attack an enemy objective, in other words, it's a place where the enemy is, you're maximizing violence on the enemy. That's you're instructed to do that, which means you kill everyone, all right. You're trying to maximize psychological damage and cause as much panic as possible so they will turn and run. Because when they're running, it's a lot easier to shoot them in the back. There's a reason for all that shit. You're trying to rout them, you know. Well, that's kind of what William Money's describing. They're just trying to rout an entire downtown area. Get the fuck out of here. I'll kill anybody. You know, that's basically what the message which statistically you'd live longer probably as an outlaw doing that in the 1800s. That would probably promote survival. People would be afraid to talk about you, or they'd be too panicked to be able to describe you accurately, or they might not be able to identify you in a lineup. There might have been a lot of different ways, and you're a lot safer if you're outnumbered against a bunch of people if everybody's running from you than if they're just standing there. You don't know if one of them's got a gun in their pocket.
Right.
So, yeah, there would be a reason why you would do that if you thought about it. Just being mean as hell. Just fucking try to put terror in them and get everybody to run.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that would promote survival.
You know, another thing that actually surprised me when I was like doing research about this movie was that where do you think that this movie was shot?
Looking at it, I'd say California, but probably not. Probably Italy.
Alberta, Canada.
Okay.
Isn't that crazy? Like almost all of it was shot in Alberta, Canada.
It looked like California did it.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was, like somewhere out west somewhere, like California or New Mexico or something.
It looked like the base of Sierra Nevada mountain chain around that area.
That's exactly what it looked like. But nope, it was apparently Alberta, Canada. And I was like, that blew my mind. I was like, I didn't know any part of Alberta looked like that. Shows what I know. I've never been to Canada, so you know what I mean? All right, so you have anything else you would like to add about the
Classic
movie?
flick, man. It's a must-see.
Classic. Even if you don't like Westerns.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a huge, I like some Westerns, but I'm not a huge Western fan. But this is a great movie.
It's not just a Western.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. It has kind of gothic elements to it. It has organized crime and gangster type elements in it. it just happens to be set in the Old West, and it's got a lot of morality lessons in it, revolving around violence, what that's like,
Yeah.
and what civilization's like.
And like I said, it has kind of like a theme about people's fates, how random they are, and also, like I said, mythologizing, like that nothing's really like the way that you
also
hear that it is.
The dynamics, the tension between factions, you know what I mean? The cowboys versus the hookers versus the law enforcement versus outlaws, you know, versus fucking psychopathic serial killer, basically, or multiple mass murderer, which is what Money was. He was a fucking mass murderer.
True that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a great flick, and you should see it. Like I said, even if you're not really into westerns, it's just like a good movie, just period, regardless of genre. So that will do it for this movie retrospective. We'll see you guys again on the next one. Bye.